Hey everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Prescott, and I have been a member of the Republican Executive Committee, and I was the secretary during the historic 2024 election. And, we think of that 2024 election as being historic because of the presidential election with Donald J. Trump. However, Monroe County also had somewhat of a historic election in the Supervisor of Elections race. So I'm going to read you some information that just came out during that election, and I'll just give you a quick background. So we have a primary, which ends in August, and then we have the general, which was in November. So the primary is against Republican, Democrats against Democrat. Whoever wins that election then goes on to the general election, okay? And then that's where it's a Republican against Democrat. So in the 2024 primary election, we had two candidates running for Supervisor of Elections in Monroe County, and that was Margaret Romero and Sherri Hodies. As you all know, Sherri Hodies won that election. But during this time and during this campaign, the Republican Executive Committee chose to entertain the idea of endorsing one Republican candidate over another and providing a $20,000 contribution to her campaign, and that was for Sherri Hodies. So as a secretary, I was heavily involved in that, and I'm going to read you some information, but before we get there, a complaint was made by a woman named Phyllis May, and you'll understand this when I read it. She says in her statement that she found some information on the Key Citizen newspaper, I guess, or maybe online, that there was a potential misappropriation of funds and ethics violations by the chairwoman of the executive committee for the Republican Party, Rhonda Rebman-Lopez, and then also involving Sherri Hodies. She was the treasurer at the time. So I served on the board with these people. Now the complaint comes out, and it has to go directly to the state attorney, Dennis Ward. Dennis Ward was a member of the Republican Executive Committee during this time. So he rightfully recused himself. Now, when he recuses himself, that means that he has to identify the case to the governor, and the governor will then issue an executive order honoring his recusal and then assigning the new state attorney, which ended up going to Lee County, okay? So I'm going to read to you the outcome of that because this is breaking news. And when the misappropriation of funds and ethics complaint was filed, somehow, let's be logical here, somehow the executive order gets issued by Governor Ron DeSantis, and out of nowhere, the Democrat candidate, Ron Saunders, starts campaigning on that. He is posting it everywhere, and he's campaigning on it. And he's doing this before Sherri Hodies finds out, before Rhonda, the chairman, finds out, before anyone at the Republican Executive Committee finds out. So if there was a line of succession of who's going to receive that executive order first, you would probably assume it's going to be State Attorney Dennis Ward, because he asks for the recusal. He's granted the recusal, and out of the nowhere, the executive order starts being used for a campaign by the Democrat, which is very odd. Let's also add the fact that Dennis Ward has a radio station called Good Morning Good Morning Isla Mirada, and had had Ron Saunders as a guest many, many times. I think he only had Sherri on there maybe once or twice. I don't think Sherri was treated well and did not want to return. So anyway, we have the result of that complaint from Lee County. They have filed it with the governor, and I'm going to read it to you. So I'm going to put it up on screen here. You can see here that this is from the Office of the State Attorney, 20th Judicial Circuit, from Amira D. Fox, State Attorney. This is for Lee County. The Honorable Ron DeSantis. So this was a letter sent to the governor on August 14th of this year, 2025. And it reads here that it's having to do with the Executive Order number 24-203, election complaint concerning Rhonda Rebman-Lopez and Sherri Hodies, made by Phyllis May. Oh, Phyllis Ward. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? And dated July 26, 2024. Dear Governor DeSantis, on September 20th, 2025, I believe that should be 2024 because that's when the executive order was issued. Anyway, pursuant to the above referenced executive order, State Attorney Amira D. Fox accepted this assignment on behalf of the 16th Circuit of Florida. The matter was handled by Deputy Chief Assistant State Attorney John Domerick Jr. and Investigator Martin Kinney. After a review of the evidence available and all applicable law, it was determined that no formal charges will be filed in this case. A copy of the disposition memorandum is attached. I will be reading that. There being nothing further to be done in this matter, it is respectfully requested that the state attorney of the 20th Circuit be discharged from further duty with reference to Executive Order 24-203. I appreciate the opportunity to have served in this matter. And then he signs it. Okay. And then Honorable Dennis Ward was CC'd and provided a copy back in August. Okay. So you can see here's the beginning of the memo. It's got all the correct details. It gives us an introduction similar to what I've already discussed, but we're going to go over it. This investigation was initiated by Key West, Florida resident Phyllis May on July 26, 2024. Phyllis May composed a complaint letter to Dennis Ward, state attorney for the 16th Judicial Circuit of Florida, which compromises Monroe County, Florida. Phyllis May's letter alleged voter fraud and unlawful distribution of funds by Monroe County Republican Executive Committee, further referred to as the MCREC. I'll probably just call it the REC. Chair Rhonda Rebman-Lopez and the REC Treasurer, Sherri Hodies, stemming from a vote conducted at an April 20th, 2024 REC meeting. State Attorney Dennis Ward was present at this April 20th, 2024 REC meeting. Therefore, State Attorney Dennis Ward forwarded Phyllis May's complaint to letter to Governor DeSantis' office to avoid a conflict of interest or any appearance of impropriety. This office accepted a conflict state attorney executive assignment from Governor Ron DeSantis' office pursuant to Executive Order number 24-203, signed on September 20th, 2024. That's the date that should be on the cover letter. This executive order assigned the Honorable Amira D. Fox, State Attorney for the 20th Judicial Circuit of Florida, to discharge the duties of the Honorable Dennis W. Ward, State Attorney for the 16th Judicial Circuit of Florida, regarding the investigation and prosecution of these allegations, if warranted, and all related matters regarding Rhonda Rebman-Lopez and Sherri Hodies. This investigation was handled by Office of the State Attorney of the 20th Judicial Circuit, SAO, as referred to going further, Investigator Martin Kenny. The investigation's case closing report of SOA, Investigator Martin Kenny, sets forth the details of the investigation. This legal memorandum relies upon the recitation of facts contained in this report. Factual summary. Phyllis May's complaint letter indicated that on April 20th, 2024, the REC held a meeting of its members and voted on whether to endorse and contribute financially to the campaign of Sherri Hodies. Sherri Hodies was the REC treasurer and a Republican candidate for Monroe County Supervisor of Elections. Sherri Hodies faced another Republican candidate for Monroe County Supervisor of Elections in the primary election, Margaret Romero. Phyllis May further wrote that the REC voted to endorse Sherri Hodies and contribute $20,000 of REC funds to Sherri Hodies' campaign. Phyllis May alleged that the vote did not properly follow Republican Party of Florida, RPOF, further referred to, Rule 8B, which governs endorsements of candidates for office. Phyllis May argued that these actions constitute voter fraud and unlawful distribution of funds by REC Chair Rhonda Rebman-Lopez and the REC Treasurer Sherri Hodies. REC Attorney Robert H. Fernandez provided records subpoenaed by the state attorney's office. These records include RPOF rules of procedure for Republican state executive committees and REC meeting minutes for April 20th, 2024. Review of the documents showed that on April 20th, 2024, 39 REC members were present for the meeting. Phyllis May was interviewed under oath and recorded. Phyllis May stated that her complaint letter was based on news articles she read in the Key West Citizen newspaper. It's probably not a good thing for them. Phyllis May is not an REC member. Phyllis May was not present at the April 20th, 2024 meeting. Phyllis May had no documentation or firsthand knowledge of the events surrounding the REC's vote or distribution of funds. Several REC members were interviewed and provided testimony that the April 20th, 2024 meeting was chaotic and contentious. Many REC members did not understand the rules that were used for the vote. Several REC members stated that the most REC votes are decided by a simple majority, which is true. RPOF Rule 8B was not a rule that members were familiar and confident with. John Dick, school board member, you guys, I want you to remember him, a REC member, approximately 25 years, stated that the REC has never endorsed one Republican candidate over another in a primary election. John Dick also said that the REC has never financially contributed to one Republican candidate over another in a primary election. I'm sorry, John, but if you've been a member for 25 years and you aren't familiar with this rule, that could be why Monroe County doesn't win Republican elections all that often, or maybe why the Supervisor of Elections position remained a Democrat for, I think, 12 years. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's right. Anyway, REC member Patrick Foley provided testimony that the April 20th, 2024 vote had many questions about how to interpret RPOF Rule 8B. There were at least two different interpretations being argued. Patrick Foley stated that Chair Rhonda Rebman-Lopez and Secretary Jessica Prescott, myself, answered questions from members related to the RPOF Rule 8B. Chair Rhonda Rebman-Lopez and Secretary Jessica Prescott decided that their interpretation was correct, and the vote to endorse Sherri Hodies and contribute to Sherri Hodies' campaign passed. Patrick Foley stated that nothing nefarious happened. No one intentionally attempted to bypass RPOF Rule 8B. Patrick Foley further said that the root issue was the inability for members to read and understand the rule. Now, I'm going to stop there because I want to go here to the footnote. Margaret Romero was not a member of the REC. Margaret Romero declined membership to the REC, and she did not request any campaign funds from the REC. Only Sherri Hodies requested an endorsement and a $20,000 campaign contribution. Hey, she plays to win. Catherine Ann Ovidi, who at the time was the state committee woman for Monroe County, was interviewed. Catherine Ann Ovidi stated to her knowledge, the Monroe County REC has never voted under RPOF Rule 8B to endorse a candidate and make an expenditure of funds. REC Secretary Jessica Prescott, myself, was interviewed. Secretary Jessica Prescott stated that normally routine votes are handled by a simple majority. The executive board's interpretation of RPOF Rule 8B and how the vote would be conducted was expressed to the members prior to the vote. During the February and March 2024 executive board meetings, the executive board discussed how to endorse and contribute campaign funds to a primary candidate. Secretary Jessica Prescott stated that during the March 2024 Executive Board meeting, Vice Chair Antonia Schuster declared she had researched the issue and that RPOF Rule 8B allowed a vote to be taken for a primary candidate. Remember, you guys, primary is August, general is November. The Executive Board agreed that by using RPOF Rule 8B, if there was a 60% quorum in attendance, then the vote would be conducted under RPOF Rule 8B1. If there was not a 60% quorum, then the vote would proceed under RPOF Rule 8B2. The Executive Board clarified their interpretation of the rule through email and during the April 20th, 2024 meeting. The Executive Board's interpretation determined that the vote passed. Secretary Jessica Prescott added that the RPOF Rule 8B had not been used by the REC prior to April 20th, 2024. Secretary Jessica Prescott believed that there was a 60% quorum, and therefore a simple majority vote was required. This was the consensus of the Executive Board, and that was presented to the members prior to the vote. At no point during the discussion of explanation prior to the vote was there any question raised over the executive body's interpretation. Henry Stark Jr., the new REC treasurer elected in December of 2024, stated that the vote passed as a simple majority. Those who opposed the vote outcome became argumentative and threatening. Mr. Stark said that no one was trying to pull a fast one and there was no malintent. Mr. Stark believed that the RPOF Rule 8B is poorly written and left open for a variety of interpretations. Mr. Stark testified that the REC's financial expenditures only require a simple majority, unlike endorsements, which must follow the RPOF, that's the Republican Party of Florida, so the state level, Rule 8B. They are the ones that set this forth, and that's what we have to follow. The scope of review. This legal review is limited to the issue of whether Rhonda Rebman-Lopez or Sherri Hodies committed a violation of the criminal laws of Florida. No policy, procedure, or civil issues outside of the jurisdiction of the state attorney's office are addressed, and no comment on such matters is intended. Legal determination. Florida Statutes Chapter 103 pertains to political parties and executive committees and members. This investigation considered whether Rhonda Rebman-Lopez or Sherri Hodies committed a violation of Florida Statute 103.1213 and Florida Statute 103.1213 states any chair or treasurer of a state or county executive committee of any political party who knowingly misappropriates or makes unlawful expenditure of or a false or improper accounting for the funds of such committee is guilty of felony of the third degree. Conclusion. There is insufficient evidence to prove Rhonda Rebman-Lopez or Sherri Hodies had the requisite criminal intent to misappropriate or make an unlawful expenditure of Monroe County Republican executive funds. The REC membership had distinct and opposing interpretations of RPOF Rule 8B. Witnesses interviewed provided evidence that the executive board articulated their interpretation and planned use of RPOF Rule 8B prior to the vote held on April 20th, 2024. No members of the REC questioned, argued, or debated the executive board's interpretation of or use of RPOF Rule 8B until the ballots were counted and results of the vote were announced. The evidence is clear that different members of the Republican Executive Committee had different interpretations of the Rule 8B, and members had little to no experience with that rule. RPOF Rule 8B controls Republican Executive Committee endorsements of candidates. It does not govern financial contributions to campaign candidates. Financial expenditures only require a simple majority vote. The Monroe County REC did not need to comply with RPOF Rule 8B for a financial contribution to Sherri Hodies' campaign. Had the REC simply proceeded with a majority vote for the financial distribution, as the organization had always done in the past, the allegation of misappropriation of funds may have been avoided. So they're saying if we had not had an endorsement of a candidate and a request for funds, maybe we wouldn't have gotten into the woods about Rule 8. But Rule 8 existed and we exercised it. Based on the totality of the evidence, the conflicts in the evidence, and circumstances pertaining to this complaint, the state attorney's office cannot prove a violation of criminal law beyond a reasonable doubt. For this reason set forth above, there is no basis for further action by this office. This matter is closed. That concludes the investigation. And I hope that Monroe County voters will see that there were never any wrongdoing on the part of this executive committee. And in reality, all of the drama and all of the press came directly from actual REC members that just didn't like the results of the vote. And that media went everywhere. It went just outside of our county, outside of our state. And it was quite a stain on that campaign. So let's be grateful that Sherri Hodies has won her campaign and is now currently our Supervisor of Elections. And let's also be grateful that Rhonda Rebman-Lopez won her re-election as the Chairwoman of the Republican Executive Committee. So yes, they both hold their positions to this day. Thank you.